Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America by Barbara Ehrenreich. Picture this. You're working your tail off, playing by all the rules, giving everything you've got. But no matter how hard you hustle, you just can't seem to catch a break. Maybe you're juggling 2 jobs, running from one shift to the next, but somehow you still can't afford a decent place to sleep. Forget dreaming about the future. You're just trying to survive the present. Sounds like something out of a Dickens novel, right? Some grim tale from the past? Here's the twist. This isn't history. This is happening right now to millions of people in America. Yes, that America, one of the wealthiest nations on the planet. Today, we're unpacking a book that ripped the curtain wide open on this reality. A book that became an instant sensation, a New York Times bestseller, and essential reading for anyone who wants to understand what's really going on behind the scenes in modern America. We're talking about Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America by the remarkable Barbara Ehrenreich. Barbara wasn't your typical writer. Sure, she had a PhD in biology and could hold her own in any intellectual circle, but she also came from working-class roots. Miners and factory workers filled her family tree. She understood, bone deep, that punching a clock wasn't just about earning a paycheck. It was, as her sister put it, a constant fight against the hopelessness of being a wage slave. The whole idea for this book was born, ironically enough, over a fancy lunch. Barbara and her editor were chatting about poverty, wondering how anyone could possibly survive on minimum wage, especially with welfare reform forcing more people into low-paying jobs. Half joking, Barbara suggested, someone ought to do some old-school journalism here, actually go out and try living like that. She was thinking of some hungry young reporter. Her editor just grinned and said, "You." And that's how Barbara Ehrenreich, accomplished writer and intellectual, ended up embarking on one of the most eye-opening journeys in modern journalism. She decided to leave her comfortable life behind and dive headfirst into the world of low-wage work, not as some distant observer taking notes, but as an actual participant. Her question was deceptively simple. Could she, with all her advantages, education, and experience, actually survive on waitress wages, maid's pay, or a retail clerk's hourly rate? Could she make it work on $6 or $7 an hour? What she discovered went way beyond spreadsheets and budgets. She uncovered stories about dignity and exhaustion, unexpected kindness and casual cruelty, and the startling invisibility of the people who literally keep our society running. Stick with me through this journey, and I promise you'll never look at the world quite the same way again. That restaurant where you grab lunch, the hotel where you vacation, the store where you shop, you'll start seeing the real people behind the service, understanding the hidden economics shaping millions of lives. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start questioning some assumptions we all make about work, success, and what it really takes to get by in America. Barbara Ehrenreich wasn't about to study this from her desk. Her scientific training taught her that real understanding requires getting your hands dirty. So she established some ground rules for her experiment. First, no leveraging her education or writing credentials. Second, take the best-paying job offered and give it everything she's got. Third, find the cheapest housing that's still reasonably safe and private. She built in a few safety nets. She'd keep a car, and she wouldn't let herself become homeless or starve. If things got truly desperate, she had an ATM card waiting. She knew this wasn't about truly experiencing poverty. She had escape routes real poor people didn't. Her goal was simpler. Could she match her income to her expenses day after day? She also recognized her advantages: white skin, native English, good health, no kids to support. Her cover story: a divorced homemaker with some college, re-entering the workforce. First stop, Key West, Florida, close to home. Right away, housing became the nightmare she didn't expect. Even calculating a $7 an hour income, the math just didn't work. Flop houses, trailers, everything was shockingly expensive. She quickly learned a hard truth. In places where tourists and wealthy people want to be, the folks cleaning toilets and serving meals get squeezed out. She ended up in a tiny efficiency cabin 30 miles from work, costing $500 a month, plus a hefty deposit, money she could only afford because she'd budgeted startup cash, a luxury most people in her shoes don't have. First lesson learned: you need money to save money, whether it's for a rental deposit or basic kitchen supplies to cook cheap meals. Finding work proved surprisingly tough. Despite all the help-wanted ads, callbacks were scarce. Hotels, supermarkets, everywhere wanted lengthy applications, bizarre computerized personality tests, checking for honesty and obedience, and mandatory drug screens. Eventually, she landed a waitressing gig at a depressing hotel restaurant she nicknamed the Hearthside, earning a measly $2.43 an hour plus tips. The law supposedly required employers to top up wages if tips didn't reach minimum wage, $5.15 back then, but nobody ever mentioned this little detail. Training came fast and furious from Gail, a wiry, quick-moving server who mixed work instructions with fragments of her tragic backstory: a boyfriend killed in prison, months living in her truck. Barbara immediately felt overwhelmed. Waitressing wasn't just carrying plates. It meant mastering complicated ordering systems, juggling multiple tables, and endless side work: cleaning, prepping, restocking everything. Despite wanting to stay detached and scientific, she found herself actually caring, driven by an old family rule about doing things properly. She also felt an unexpected connection to customers, mostly hardworking locals. This service ethic made her want to give them the best experience possible, even sneaking extra croutons on salads when the manager wasn't watching. Her coworkers did the same, sometimes dipping into their own tips to help customers. It became clear that servers often express their humanity and earn their tips by secretly distributing extra butter, sour cream, or whipped cream. For a little while, life almost seemed manageable. She bonded with her coworkers: Lionel, the Haitian busboy; Timmy, the teenage helper; Joan, the feminist hostess; even Billy, the temperamental cook. She developed a rhythm: work late, drive home with music playing, grab a simple snack, sleep, wash her uniform, repeat. But two massive problems loomed. First was management. Managers, she realized, existed solely to ensure some distant corporation made money. Their job was keeping everyone busy, even during dead times, creating pointless, theatrical tasks just to avoid looking idle. Mandatory meetings were less about teamwork and more about scolding, dirty break room, rules against, gossip, which really meant talking among employees, threats of locker searches. A sudden drug testing crackdown, based on rumors, made the whole place feel like middle school. The second problem was even worse: money. The job simply didn't pay enough to live on. Her coworkers' situations were precarious. Gail shared a flophouse room for $250 a week before moving back to her truck. Claude, a cook, crammed into a two-room apartment with 3 others. Annette, pregnant and abandoned, lived with her mom. Marianne and Tina paid outrageous weekly rates for motel rooms. Joan lived in her van. Barbara's $500 efficiency only worked because of her startup savings. There were no secret tricks poor people knew. Instead, there were extra costs: paying by the week for rooms, buying expensive convenience food, skipping health care until small problems became expensive emergencies. Gail couldn't afford her estrogen pills, which caused migraines requiring pricier medication. Barbara's own finances were shaky, tips were dropping, and she was coming up short on rent. She needed a second job. After striking out on housekeeping, she landed another waitressing position at Jerry's, a busy chain restaurant attached to a budget hotel. Jerry's was absolute chaos: a greasy, smelly, high-volume madhouse. No breaks meant staff smoking cigarettes near the bathroom, like little moments of sanity in the insanity. The pace was relentless, requiring a zen-like focus just to keep up. She tried working both jobs for 2 days, scarfing fast food between shifts in her car, but the exhaustion was crushing. When her Hearthside manager caught her trying to sneak food during a quiet moment, she quit, leaving Gail behind in that truck parked in the hotel lot. Jerry's demanded everything: Pain became her constant companion, managed with fistfuls of ibuprofen. Management meant Joy, whose mood swung wildly, and BJ, the bitch, who screamed constantly and enforced petty rules, like replacing whipped cream cans with baggies because she suspected employees of inhaling the propellant. BJ warned Barbara against chatting with customers. Her job was just moving food and money. Customers were obstacles, the enemy. Barbara found herself starting to see it that way, especially with difficult customers like the visible Christians who left pathetic tips. Still, there was real camaraderie among the servers, Nita, Ellen, Lucy, who covered for each other through sickness and bathroom breaks. Barbara's main connection was George, a young Czech dishwasher being exploited by an Urkoya agent who took a cut of his pay. She tried teaching him English. Then George got accused of trying to steal something minor from storage, probably because he was hungry. Barbara felt paralyzed, unable to defend him, infected by this terrible, servile feeling the low-wage environment bred. Realizing Jerry's wasn't financially viable either, averaging only $7.50 an hour with tips, and wanting to cut her commute, she used her deposit and savings to move into a tiny, run-down trailer closer to Key West. Life felt bleaker, surrounded by what felt like canned labor being preserved between shifts. Near month's end, she finally snagged a housekeeping job at the hotel attached to Jerry's, paying $6.10 an hour. Her trainer, Carly, was missing her front teeth, a stark reminder of what no healthcare means. The work was brutal. Stripping beds, scrubbing bathrooms, wrestling a massive vacuum cleaner, all while daytime soaps played on room TVs. Carly moved slowly, worried about time motion studies and getting paid per room instead of hourly, brooding over disrespect from guests and even other staff. Barbara attempted one last day juggling both jobs. Housekeeping left her destroyed. She showered, took Advil and tried cleaning food stains off her only work pants before heading to Jerry's. That night was the perfect storm. Understaffed kitchen, Joy in a foul mood, and a table of 10 demanding British tourists overwhelming everything. Food got rejected. Joy screamed and hurled a tray, confronted complaining customers. Barbara just walked out. No notice, no collecting tips, just overwhelming failure. She hadn't just failed her experiment. She felt like she'd failed her coworkers, especially George, whom she'd forgotten to give her tips. Before leaving Key West for good, she gave her trailer key and deposit to Gail. Next stop, Portland, Maine. She picked it partly for its overwhelming whiteness, thinking she'd blend in easier without questions, and partly because she'd heard about a severe labor shortage there. Arriving alone, she felt the anxiety of dislocation, common for poor people, but totally alien to her middle-class life of planning and predictability. Housing was immediately nightmarish again. The tight market meant sky-high rents, even for dismal basement rooms with blocked windows or converting motel rooms. She settled on the Blue Haven Motel, a cottage costing $120 a week after an initial $200 tourist rate plus deposit. She noticed her neighbors, mostly families, were packed 3 or 4 to a room. Job hunting confirmed that despite the supposed labor shortage, Portland was still a $6 to $7 an hour town. Employers seemed weirdly resistant to raising wages, defying basic economic theory. She applied everywhere: factories, Goodwill, Walmart, with another personality test obsessed with marijuana, maid services. The application process itself felt humbling, impersonal, and those personality tests felt invasive, demanding a performance of total obedience. She accepted 2 jobs: dietary aide at Woodcrest Residential Facility, a nursing home paying $7 an hour on weekends, and cleaner at The Maids, a corporate service paying $6.65 on weekdays. Woodcrest meant working the locked Alzheimer's ward, serving meals, dealing with confused and sometimes incontinent residents, endless dishwashing. She found moments of connection, learning residents, names and quirks, but also faced indignities, like having milk thrown on her. She bonded slightly with Pete, a cook full of warnings about workplace gossip. One Saturday, She worked the entire ward alone due to staffing shortages and broken equipment, pushing herself relentlessly, a stark example of how vulnerable understaffed facilities really are. The maids required a day and a half of video training, teaching a rigid, systematized cleaning method, specific rags for specific surfaces, moving left to right, top to bottom, everything timed with a stopwatch. The focus was less on actual sanitation, minimal water, no discussion of germs, and more on cosmetic touches, fluffing pillows, facing labels outward, creating patterns in carpets, using signature air freshener. The actual work was frantic. Teams ran between cars and houses, racing the clock for each assigned home. Lunch breaks were often 5-minute convenience store stops, with many workers surviving on chips or literally nothing. Barbara noticed Rosalie, a young coworker, getting dizzy from living on Doritos. Coworkers shared stories of precarious living, extended families crammed together, housemates, constant financial stress. Small kindnesses existed, but desperation was obvious, sharing toll money, hunting for free dental care. Physical pain was everywhere. Bad backs, arthritis, shoulder injuries, from years of labor. The work meant constant exposure to intimate, nasty aspects of strangers' lives, filthy toilets, pubic hair, everywhere. Owners often distrusted them, setting traps or spying, reinforcing the maids' feeling of invisibility and disrespect. Barbara developed an itchy, painful rash, probably from cleaning chemicals or unsanitary conditions, costing her $30 to treat. She struggled with the indignity, the heat, the dehydration, rules forbade drinking inside houses, and the sheer physical toll. Cleaning floors on hands and knees felt particularly degrading, like a posture of submission. She tried adopting a detached, almost spiritual attitude, viewing the work as service. That shattered when Holly, her pale, possibly pregnant team leader, fell and injured her ankle. Holly refused to stop working, terrified of Ted, the boss. Barbara confronted Ted on the phone about prioritizing money over health, but he brushed her off. She attempted a one-person strike, refusing to work unless Holly got help, but her coworkers didn't join, and Holly herself insisted on continuing. Feeling helpless and furious, Barbara finished the shift. Ted didn't fire her. Instead, he later gave her a small raise, maybe trying to buy her off. She realized the power of Ted's approval came from workers, chronic lack of respect everywhere else. On Pauline's last day, after 2 years of work facing knee surgery from all that scrubbing, Ted offered zero thanks or acknowledgement. Before leaving Maine, Barbara revealed her identity to her team. Lori said wistfully, "I'd like to have this stuff someday," while Colleen voiced something simpler, to be able to take a day off now and then, and still buy groceries the next day. Final stop: Minneapolis, Minnesota, chosen for its supposedly tight labor market and lower rents. She stayed temporarily with friends of friends, caring for their cockatiel, Budgie, a minor annoyance representing the compromises poor people make for lodging. She quickly landed potential jobs at Walmart paying $7 an hour, and Menards, a home improvement store initially quoted at $10 an hour, later disputed, both requiring drug tests. Anxiety over the tests, thanks to recent marijuana use, led her to a weekend detox marathon of water and diuretics. The apartment search in Minneapolis proved catastrophic. Vacancy rate under 1%, rents skyrocketing, affordable options non-existent or requiring endless waits. She felt the catch-22, needing stable housing for a job, needing a job to afford housing. Her only hope seemed the Hopkins Park Plaza, offering weekly furnished rooms, but securing one proved impossible. She heard Caroline's story, a stark reminder of real struggles behind her simulated ones. She endured the degrading drug testing process and attended a bizarre group interview for Mountain Air, selling Filter Queen vacuums disguised as environmental consulting. After passing both drug tests, she faced confusion over the Menards offer. Hours extended to 11 per day, pay questioned, Exhausted from a sleepless night after lengthy Walmart orientation and unnerved by Menard's backtracking, she impulsively quit Menard's before even starting, telling herself Walmart, as the nation's largest employer, offered better research potential. She noted how the hiring process, especially drug tests, disempowers applicants, preventing negotiation. Forced from her free lodging, she landed at the Clearview Inn, a dismal motel charging $245 a week, more than her take-home pay. Life there felt insecure and uncomfortable. Screenless window, no fan, transparent curtain, no bolt, smells of mold and mouse droppings. She felt the heightened fear poor women experience in unsafe environments. Work at Walmart started anticlimactically. Assigned to ladies' wear, her main job was zoning, organizing by color, style, size, and endlessly returning clothes left in fitting rooms or scattered by customers. The work felt trivial compared to plumbing, oppressed by enforced gentility, yet the sheer volume made it physically demanding, measured in shopping carts full of returns. She memorized the complex layout, only to have managers rearrange it constantly to surprise customers. Her shift changed to the 2 to 11 closing shift, ramping up exhaustion and making breaks precious, calculated moments of relief. As shifts wore on, customer interactions shifted from aggressive hospitality to aggressive hostility, as she resented the mess they created. She developed a weird sense of ownership over her department, wanting pristine order, hating sales that disrupted it. Conflicts arose, like with a tiny coworker focused only on folding, revealing Barbara's own regression to a meaner, territorial, Barb, self. The housing situation stayed impossible. Hopkins Park Plaza fell through again. Her Walmart wages couldn't cover even the cheapest weekly motel, much less save for a deposit. A potential weekend supermarket job evaporated. Seeking help from a charity, CEAP, yielded only useless food items and the suggestion to move into a shelter. Crucially, she learned another Walmart employee had recently sought similar aid, confirming her coworkers were struggling just as badly. She moved temporarily to a slightly better Comfort Inn at $49.95 a night, a luxury she couldn't sustain. There, she hit her stride at Walmart, achieving a flow state, putting clothes away almost automatically. She developed a theory that Walmart lets mothers regress, acting like messy kids while associates clean up, providing therapeutic outlet. Despite improved performance, impatience grew. Why did people tolerate such low wages? Inertia, lack of options, spousal support, multiple jobs, but also, perhaps, a workforce weeded of rebels by those tests, dreaming of profit sharing, susceptible to the cult of Sam. The big box environment felt all-consuming, erasing alternatives. She began subtly asking coworkers about wages and conditions, planting seeds of discontent, finding shared frustrations about overtime, schedules, and disrespectful managers. Hearing news of a local hotel workers' strike felt galvanizing. Caught stealing time to make housing calls, she narrowly avoided trouble with Howard. Realizing she couldn't afford even another week, she told Melissa she was quitting. Melissa considered leaving too. On her final break, watching strike news on TV, another coworker shared her frustration, fist raised in solidarity. Barbara felt regret. Maybe given more time, they could have done something. In her evaluation, Barbara gives herself a solid grade as a worker, emphasizing that no job is truly unskilled and highlighting the physical and mental demands. However, she judges her ability to survive on those wages a complete failure, primarily due to brutal housing costs. She analyzes the systemic issues: housing markets skewed by wealth, government withdrawal from affordable housing support, and wages stagnating despite labor shortages due to employer resistance and workers, lack of mobility and information, the money taboo. She critiques the authoritarian workplace culture, surveillance, drug tests, personality tests, rules against talking, firing at will, arguing it functions like a dictatorship that erodes civil liberties and self-respect. keeping workers feeling unworthy and wages low. She contrasts this with workers' actual pride and ingenuity, often stifled by management. The result is deep inequality, where many earn far less than a living wage, estimated at $14 an hour for a single parent with 2 kids. Poverty isn't sustainable, she concludes. It's an acute emergency marked by hunger, unstable housing, and untreated illness. Returning to her privileged life, she's struck by how invisible the poor are to the affluent, and argues the proper response isn't guilt, but shame at our societal dependence on the great sacrifice made by the underpaid working poor, who are the major philanthropists of our society. She ends with a quiet prediction. Someday, the working poor will demand what they're actually worth. Reading Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed isn't just reading a book. It's like slipping on a pair of glasses that suddenly reveals a hidden dimension of the world you thought you understood. It takes those everyday transactions, grabbing coffee, checking into a hotel, picking up clothes at a store, and exposes the human effort, the grinding struggle, and often the quiet desperation making it all possible. What makes this book so powerful, nearly 25 years after publication, is its unflinching honesty and Barbara's willingness to truly immerse herself, not just observe from a distance. She doesn't romanticize poverty, and she doesn't pretend to have easy solutions. She simply shows us what it actually feels like: the bone-deep exhaustion, the constant anxiety about rent, the steady stream of small humiliations, the surprising moments of solidarity, the way your spirit slowly gets ground down, nickel by nickel, dime by dime. In today's world, where we clap for essential workers but often fail to provide essential wages or basic protections, Ehrenreich's insights hit even harder. She forces us to confront the massive disconnect between the actual value of work people do, caring for the sick, cleaning homes, serving food, stocking shelves, and the value society assigns them, measured in pathetic dollars per hour. The book completely dismantles that comfortable myth that hard work alone guarantees escape from poverty. Barbara worked incredibly hard, often juggling multiple grueling jobs, yet found herself constantly teetering on the edge, crushed by the costs of basic necessities, especially housing. It reveals poverty not as personal failure, but often as a mathematical trap, where low wages and high costs create a cycle that's brutally difficult to escape. So what can we actually take from this journey? How do we apply these lessons in our real lives? First, pay attention. Really notice the people serving you, cleaning for you, stocking shelves around you. See them not just as functions in your day, but as real individuals likely facing challenges you can't imagine. Simple acknowledgement, actual eye contact, a genuine thank you, these can mean more than you realize. Second, tip generously whenever you can. For many service workers, tips aren't bonus money. They're essential income needed to bridge that massive gap between their wage and what life actually costs. Third, support efforts for fair wages, whether that's advocating for higher minimum wage, choosing businesses that pay living wages, or understanding why unions matter and giving workers collective voice. Recognize that fair compensation is fundamental to human dignity. And finally, challenge assumptions. Next time you hear someone dismiss low-wage workers as unskilled or lacking ambition, remember Barbara's experience. Remember the physical toll, the mental stress, the constant calculations required just to survive. Remember the systemic barriers, the housing crisis, the power imbalance, the everyday indignities that make pulling yourself up by your bootstraps an impossible fantasy for so many. That was our deep dive into Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America by Barbara Ehrenreich. We've journeyed through demanding shifts, impossible budgets, and human stories defining the low-wage experience in America. But honestly, hearing me talk about it is like looking at a postcard of the Grand Canyon. It gives you an idea, sure, but it doesn't capture the vastness, the detail, the way it makes you feel standing on that edge. The real power of this book lives in Barbara's voice, her razor-sharp observations, and the unforgettable people she meets along the way. If her journey, her struggles, or the lives of people she worked alongside resonated with you even a little, do yourself a favor. Pick up the actual book. Reading it isn't just about learning facts. It's about gaining genuine empathy, challenging your perspective, and truly understanding the human cost hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. You can find a link to the book in the description below. And hey, if this exploration added something to your day, consider dropping us a thumbs up and subscribing to Billionaire's Bookshelf. We unpack insights from impactful books like this every episode, building our understanding of the world together. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep learning and growing.